And I believe I saw in your reporting that the transaction fees have actually been higher than what the block is
Mhm.
worth, right?
Right. So there's two ways that miners get compensated in the Bitcoin network. For one, they get what's known as a block reward. In Bitcoin, a block is added to the network approximately every 10 minutes, plus or minus a few seconds. And the block reward is essentially a set of brand new, freshly minted Bitcoins that goes to whichever miner gets the reward. When Bitcoin first launched, it was 50. It reduces by half every 4 years. So it went from 50 to 25 to 12 and a half. Now it's 6.25. Next year, it's going to become 3.75. And at 6.25, at somewhere at like 18,500, $19,000, that's about $144,000 windfall for a Bitcoin miner. Uh, Typically, transaction fees, but that's not the only way that a miner gets compensated. They also get what's known as transaction fees, or more colloquially, tips, where somebody will send a transaction into the network, and then if they want a priority status to make sure that their transaction gets put through, they might add a little bit more, a little bit less. A lot of this happens automatically through wallets and exchanges, but during times of high use and congestion on the network, transaction fees can spike up from what's usually a dollar or two to, in this case, up to $30 per transaction, which is extremely high. And for the first time in years, the amount of transaction fees earned by a miner for finding a block was higher than the block reward. So that just kind of shows the peak demand. That's come down a little bit since then, but transaction fees are still higher than they have historically been for this over this period of time. And there is kind of hope and expectation that maybe transaction fees will remain a little bit heightened, which could help smooth out minor revenues and also assuage some fears that people have that as the block reward continues to reduce, miners may have less interest in mining the blockchain because theoretically it could become less valuable. So if there are investors that are interested in maybe getting some indirect exposure to all of this, it may be worth looking into publicly traded Bitcoin miners that would just benefit from the increased activity, but not necessarily have exposure to the underlying NFTs.
Hmm. So I guess kind of going back to this 2023 thing, I'm just not understanding what the selling point is here. Okay, high transaction fees, NFTs with no utility at all. Maybe they can be collectibles one day, but we've seen NFTs that have utilities kind of plummet as they were trying to be collectibles. I guess what's the point? Sell me on this.
Well, I appreciate the question. I don't necessarily know it's my job to sell you on something like this, but more to just talk about what's happening and why I'm seeing this activity. It really just at this point I think comes down to speculation, and we don't know what we don't know. It's hard to know. It's hard to forecast exactly where these innovations are going to go. I do know that there are development teams building out software infrastructure to try to add more utility onto these networks, and for whatever it's worth, I mean, Bitcoin has always been and remains the most valuable blockchain network in the world, and I know that there's a lot of enthusiasts, aside from I think the most Puritan Bitcoin maximalists, that have always felt that there would be ways to add a more diverse set of use cases on top of Bitcoin than strictly sending Bitcoins back and forth. But again, it is very highly speculative.
So speaking of new things that are happening in the crypto space, there is BRC-20. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up, Rosemary, because sort of meme coins and BRC-20 tokens are sort of being conflated with the NFTs and ordinal theory. So this is a common point of confusion. BRC-20 is an acronym that basically stands for Bitcoin Request for Comment, and this is actually a play on an Ethereum token standard called Ethereum Request for Comment. Uh, it's a little technical, so I'll kind of walk through it relatively slowly. Uh, on blockchains have different types of tokens that run on top of them. Layer ones like Ethereum or Algorand or Solana or Near or plenty of the others, or Avalanche, they have base layer tokens. Ethereum has Ether, Solana has Solana, so on and so forth. And those are the tokens that are really used to compensate nodes that process transactions and keep the network secure. Typically, they also have the largest market capitalizations. However, as decentralized applications started to be built on top of these networks, they decided to launch their own tokens. Those are called DApp tokens, decentralized application tokens, and they have to run on a separate set of rules from these base layer tokens. And at least in Ethereum, sort of like the way that of creating the standards for these new tokens is through a proposal process called Ethereum Request for Comment, so ERC. Now, the most common token standard in Ethereum is something called ERC-20, which are used to create fungible DApp tokens, like a token used for decentralized cloud storage. And again, Rosemarie, you and I would not care which one of those tokens we get, as long as we get one that's authentic. There's another token standard called ERC-721, which is used more to denote non-fungible tokens, so not fungible. And these other blockchains have their own trigraphs, their own acronyms to basically do the same thing. BRC-20, I think, is really just sort of like a nod or maybe just a bit of a parody of the ERC-20 meme, because it was used to create these BRC-20 tokens on top of Bitcoin that are also seem to, although they're not useless because they do have certain market capitalizations, are meant to kind of just be fun experimental play money. And in fact, Domo, the pseudonymous developer who built all of this, said himself on Twitter that these tokens that are being minted should be worthless. But nevertheless, especially Bitcoin crowd, the crypto crowd loves a good tool to speculate. Meme coins are a fantastic tool to speculate, especially in crypto. I mean, we're seeing millions of these tokens being printed, and this has also led to further congestion on the Bitcoin blockchain, which has contributed to the rise in fees and growing miner revenue that we spoke about before.